Hey, podcast listeners, this is your host with the most, JJ Gordon, and this episode of JJ Meets World talks about the North Dakota Film Society. We get the inside scoop on exactly what it is and an explanation about how you could probably be a part of it. And by the way, have you checked out JJ Meets World on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those cool places? Do that while listening to a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
I bought a book that I'm really in love with right now. I'm having like this mini obsession with coffee table books. And the one that I have recently, is great VHS covers from the 80s and 90s. And it's kind of this nostalgic feeling towards like, oh, who did the art for the cover of Chopping Mall?
Does it include Buns of Steel?
I don't know if I've gotten that far yet.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind are aerobic exercise tapes, but I'm sorry, keep going.
And I mean, part of it is sort of how the layout of the case, because back in the day, that's what got your video on the shelf. Mm-hmm. And that's what appealed to people, you know, the way the movie posters do for some folks. And nowadays it's trailers or Twitter hype. But back in the day, you had to have something that would catch someone's eye. Mm-hmm. So whether it was the word parents with like blood dripping off the P, or meatballs where it's a bunch of scantily clad ladies and then there's Bill Murray skiing in the middle of it.
Lots
whatever
of close-ups of like bloody daggers.
Yeah, a lot. This book is just a love letter to a forgotten art. And
do you have some like some top ones that would go on the JJ Gordon Mount Rushmore of?
Absolutely. The Great Outdoors is one of them. Of course, a John Candy title off the top of my head. You know, why not? But it's not a photo that's on The Great Outdoors. It's a painting, like it's a photorealistic painting that's on there.
I miss that as being the norm.
Do you?
I miss that over the really poorly photoshopped things that we get now. Like the hilariously bad photoshopped. Like Ben Stiller is not really in this photo, but his face is there.
There's another one where I think it was HBONC, which was Hunchback on Campus. And it was if the bell ringer of Notre Dame got to go to college, and you don't see his face. You see it from the back, but he's wearing kind of a collegiate, like Letterman's jacket. And he's got this hunchback and he's looking out over like the quad. And that one will forever. And here's the disappointment for that one. I used to go to Take Two Video on South University Drive, and when they moved into the big space that they had that was just south of the bowler, it was a lot of windows. And so by the time that VHS was getting kind of phased out, it was so sun faded and, cracked. That's one that sticks out. The Road to Wellville is another one, which has a bunch of different faces on it, including Anthony Hopkins, where he looks like Colonel Sanders. And, what would be another one that really sticks out? Well, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, where they're all gathered around the scepter.
Yeah.
The
weird
lantern.
time travel lantern thing.
And that's the only good thing about that movie. And so there are a couple, but the book is just amazing. It's $25 right now on Amazon, so it's well worth. If you have a cinephile in your life, it is a great opportunity because it brought me back to wandering the halls of my favorite video store. Our guests today are going to tell you about their love of film and how they're bringing that to the people of North Dakota and allowing them to have a voice. Sometimes I think people feel disenfranchised with the big award shows, the Golden Globes and the Oscars, because they don't have any say in it. And mark my words, I think the future of the Oscars is actually putting more into the people's hands, like allowing them to have a vote in what they thought were best pictures and best actors and actresses.
Could you imagine that if the film societies of every state had to have primaries for different movies and stuff, and that it was actually the voting from all these state groups that was doing it, you're saying? If
you did that, maybe more people would be interested in watching the telecast.
Right.
Maybe they would say oh, look, see the favorite movie of the year did not get pushed out. But then you're talking about the People's Choice Awards, and we saw how that worked out. So sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. We're definitely going to get our film nerd on, and at one point I promise you, work Captain Ron into the conversation.
JJ Meets World.
Welcome to the studio, Scottie Knollin and Dr. Greg Carlson. Always a pleasure to see you, Greg. Scottie, we've had a chance to chat off mic, and I feel like we're already becoming best friends.
Oh, totally, yep.
Before we get into the North Dakota Film Society, let's tell the story of how you ended up in Fargo real quick.
Oh, yeah,
because I
definitely,
find it very intriguing.
Yeah, I'm from Atlanta originally, and went to college down there, worked there for a bit, and I've always loved movies, and LA has always been a place near and dear to me, so I packed up and moved to LA. I was in marketing at the time, got a great job out there, and loved the hustle and bustle of it all. I'd been writing about film for a few years at that point, and then I just kind of hit a wall where I didn't want to be part of that bustle anymore. And I'd done these solo road trips across the country, been to Fargo on one of those, thought it was charming, and always wanted to come back and explore. And as I decided to kind of pick up and move somewhere new and experience life somewhere new, Fargo is the city that won out. I was looking for a place kind of centralized where I would still be able to walk to things, but also different enough than the life I knew in Atlanta and LA. And so I have an apartment downtown.
Was this a little bit different than Atlanta and LA?
It's a little, yeah. The winter is definitely different. I kind of, oddly enough, miss the traffic sometimes. It's weird to me that I get to work in 10 minutes. I have too much free time now. So I'm still learning to acclimate to that.
More time to watch movies.
That's true.
I was going to say, Scottie told me that it was between kind of Fargo and Austin.
That's true.
And Austin was already cool. So we needed Scottie to come to Fargo to increase the cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't missed out on anything either. Fargo is a great community.
Right. And, you came at a wonderful time in Fargo, too, because right now we have movie theaters that are competing against each other. So they're actually bringing in some stuff. Greg can attest to there was a dark period where we weren't really getting any movies coming to Fargo, where
and
we
why
would
is
miss
it
big
that
stuff.
We were talking about this last week. In the day and age of the DCP, you're not shipping these huge, costly canisters of film. It doesn't make sense that there wouldn't be an opportunity to see a wider range of titles, right? I think.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's not only that, but even the fact that you can take, Universal buys 10,000 of these hard drives and you clear it and put something else on it, and you clear it and put something else on it. It's not like you've got just film that can't be used again, right? And so it's not like giant warehouses are getting eaten up. But I do find it interesting, though, every now and then when a film doesn't make it to Fargo, and I think, Well, there are some powers that be who probably decided like, nah, this audience probably wouldn't like this one that much. And then it's all that anyone around here talks about for a while. I can't think of a specific example of that off the top of my head, but I know that it's happened.
Well, I actually sent a couple messages to Marcus Theaters throughout my year and a half here of just knowing that they're opening certain movies at other locations of theirs in towns that I feel like are comparable to here. And we're not getting it for another week or two later. And I don't understand. I feel like there's an audience here for it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Without a doubt. I do always think that it's a bummer. You know, you talk about 10 minutes and you get to anywhere pretty much in Fargo, that we'll open a movie at the Fargo Theater as well as at Marcus Theaters at the same time. Because I think, well, you know, why don't we just open it at one or the other? And that way we don't have to take as big of a bite out of our screen space. But, you know, that's what bookers are for, right? They're there to try and get the maximum leverage out of each film as possible. So let's get into this. North Dakota Film Society. What is it? I'm a fan of it on Facebook. I like it because it had the word North Dakota and film in it.
Right.
Done.
There's like a whole bunch of people now that I think you made some invites and it's been getting some attention this last week since the inaugural awards were announced. So
yeah, I think it's definitely taken off a little bit quicker than we were anticipating because we're still kind of figuring out what it is. But I think the momentum is going to help shape that as we go. So it kind of started, I am a member of the Georgia Film Critics Association. And through that process, it's just been neat to see how that attracts kind of the award season conversation regionally. And when I moved here, I knew I still am a member of that. But I kind of thought it would be cool to find a group like that here of people who are just as interested in film, maybe not necessarily criticism, because I know that the audience here is a lot smaller than other places. But I couldn't find, as I was kind of doing my due diligence and searching, anything that was kind of collective in that sense. And so I just started sending out cold emails to as many people as I could Google and find. And Greg was the lucky one to answer first. And so we met up one day.
Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, just out of the blue, an email, and it was. I had no idea how, you know, what Scottie looked like, how old Scottie was, you know, what he was all about. So it was kind of, we took a leap of faith and decided to meet face to face.
I think even in my email, it was way longer than it probably needed to be because I didn't know how to explain what it was I was hoping to figure out and do or find. And kind of quickly, we put together a list of people that we felt like could be part of this first group to really get it going. And
I want to say right there that one of the challenges, I mean, large states, you know, Georgia would have people who could make a living as film critics. And to our knowledge, there's no one person in the state of North Dakota who exclusively makes their living just as a film critic. We have film critics, but it's a little bit different from a larger market.
And I kind of feel like too with North Dakota, because it is such a state that people don't either think about, and I imagine that a lot of studio heads and stuff, when they're making plans to release a movie, they're not thinking about the audience in North Dakota and who's going to end up seeing a movie there. But I kind of felt as I was looking for people that not only are there people here who do kind of dabble in criticism for film, but there's also filmmakers here, a surprising amount of filmmakers here doing really cool stuff. Almost every college and university has some sort of film course or class or something happening where they're talking about film. And I thought those were important things to highlight too, to show people in the industry that it's not just people here who want to see every blockbuster and that's it. You know, there are people here who are interested in the art of it all. And so we started kind of collecting those people. And I think right now the way the society exists is as a place that kind of celebrates film. It's not necessarily just criticism. It's not necessarily just the awards. The awards, we kind of steamrolled those to help get some kind of notoriety and some press and help build momentum. Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
It's worked out great. And so now I think we're to that next stage already of figuring out what does the future of this look like? How can the society support things like the film festival? How can it be, in kind of almost maybe a petty way, how can it be the tool to convince studios to take a risk and open interesting movies here that we may not get right away or ever, and just kind of see where it goes.
You know, North Dakota's got a weird history in its connection to certain movies. So, what was it the movie Flubber featured an actress who was born in Bismarck, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think you're talking about the remake of Flubber.
Right.
So that's so Leslie Stephenson is Moorhead High School Spuds class of 89, and I am class of 90. And so Leslie is was a friend of mine in high school. We were in Key Club together. I still have my signed, my autographed, inscribed copy of Kurt Vonnegut's Bluebird from her. But she's James Spader's partner, and she had a career on screen for a while, including as she's the dream,
like the
image,
hologram,
the fantasy,
right?
Girl in Flubber.
I had no idea.
Among other things. She's so probably one of the most well-known roles would be as is it the general's daughter, right?
Yep.
In The General's Daughter. So she plays the title character in that one.
And actress Leslie Bibb, born in Bismarck. You'd be surprised at the number of people who have North Dakota ties who are working actors, actresses, producers, directors. For a while, there's a woman named Carrie Freddy at Universal who was in charge of production or something along those lines, who was a Fargo South High grad.
Cool.
And her house was used as the mansion in the second season of the show 24, and she is Bing Crosby's old estate. And so, and I think North Dakota has direct ties to an industry. And really, when they say, "Gosh, this last weekend was kind of a disappointment at the box office," the parking lots at all our Cineplexes are full.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
And people are going to movies like there's no tomorrow. And so sometimes I think we are overlooked, which is disappointing because, we're never going, we're not going to make you $20 million on your opening weekend because the state of North Dakota says, like, this movie is aces. But in a world where we're talking about instant downloads and that shorter amount of time that you're getting on screen, I think studios should take knowledge of the pockets of the country that are going out to see the movie.
I agree, and I think they should do it in a way too where we can be part of that conversation, where it's not that we all talk about how we want to see something, and then we're on Twitter, and everyone who is in the bigger cities have already seen it weeks ago, and so by the time we get to see it, that conversation's kind of over. So we don't really get to take part in sharing our voice on it, and that's what I'm kind of hoping too, that we will get some of these movies sooner so that we can share our reviews or we can talk about it. And I think things like the Fargo Film Festival kind of helps with that too. It helps us be part of that conversation. Like, it's great that one of the movies that the Fargo Film Festival already awarded just got nominated for an Oscar. So we were kind of ahead of the game with that.
This year, we have 4 films already programmed in the Fargo Film Festival, which takes place March 17th through the 21st, 2020. 4 short films, 2 animated films, and 2 live action narrative shorts got Oscar nominations this week. So that's exciting. It's we often will have anywhere from 1 to 3 or maybe even more that fall into that category from year to year, but people have to remember that those films are juried prior to the Oscars even being announced. So it says something about the quality of the people who are working on these committees to kind of find and interact with this world, this festival circuit world that's different from kind of commercial theatrical distribution.
And then with the Film Society, when we did our nominations for our awards, one of the documentaries and international movies, Honeyland, we were the first voting body in the world. The cinematographer of the movie pointed it out on Twitter. We were the first voting body to nominate that movie in both of those categories. And then the very next week, the Oscars did it for the first time ever.
Yep. So we that's a good one. That's a really great piece of information, because we got that shout out and that acknowledgement from one of the film cinematographers, and it's gorgeous. I mean, the photography is amazing, but as a result, I was like really amped to write about it, because I would love if it won an Oscar. Yeah. Because we're playing a film in the Fargo Film Festival this year called The Pollinators, which is sort of an upper. There's some of the scenes are set in North Dakota, and it's also about bees and honeybees and dealing with colony collapse disorder and everything like that. And so it's a very different film from Honeyland, but they share some of the same themes.
Oh, that sounds good.
I keep bees.
Really?
I do. Yeah.
Interesting. Have you seen Honeyland yet?
I have not. So now I'm
It's on
doubly
Hulu
excited.
now, streaming.
Yeah.
Is
so,
it?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for
There you
that.
go.
So the central protagonist of Honeyland, her wisdom is, if you're a beekeeper, you keep half and you leave half for the bees. Do you follow that advice?
Oh, without a doubt. In fact, this last year, we followed the Farmer's Almanac saying that it was going to be a harsh winter. So we left the entire supply of honey in there, knowing that, with that early October snowstorm we had, they were going to need more to survive over the winter. So also spinning honey is the sticky, disgusting, horrible thing to do. And so if I can avoid doing it sometimes, I do. Also, you don't realize how little honey you actually use in a year when you've got 150 quart jars of it to go through. I still have honey from 2 years ago. I haven't even begun to touch, but luckily I've got a buddy who wants to start making barbecue sauce.
There you
so
go.
it's going to be a win-win.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, so what do the bees do in the winter? Do they hibernate?
They clump together and then the queen's in the middle. And so if you took an infrared photo of it, it would be this heat ball. And so they're alive. They just don't go out. When the temperature gets up to probably like somewhere between like 45 and 50 degrees, they'll venture out, and occasionally they'll venture out and the temperature will drop, and you'll just see like a little, dozen bees just all of a sudden stop and then drop down because it's too cold for them to be out. But we put styrofoam around it to try and insulate it a little bit better. And
Have you ever been stung?
no, not once.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So honeybees are not territorial. Like, most people who get stung, it's actually a wasp, yellow jacket, something like that. Honeybees, to get stung by a honeybee, you need it like to be in your shirt and like you're trying to swat at it to like finally go.
In the movie Honeyland, one of the funniest kind of elements of the movie that you don't expect is this nomadic family moves in like right on the adjacent to where this beekeeper lives, and they have 7 kids, and these little kids are constantly getting injured. They're like getting kicked by cows. The one of the boys like pushes his little sister over and she just gashes her head open. So anyone who's like a young parent would be terrified watching this, but they're also constantly getting stung by these wild bees. And so they're, there's just like welts on their faces and the kids are always crying. It's really funny. It's a part of the movie that I enjoyed. I only got to mention it briefly, like in one line of my review.
Your review is really good.
Thank you.
I like that movie too because I think that you were right in the review that it's an international feature. It's in a foreign language. There are subtitles, but there are moments like that happen where you don't even need the subtitles to understand exactly like the humor in it, also the pain and the agony of it, to kind of connect yourself. And I think that's starting to happen more and more with foreign features. I don't know, maybe it's because we can stream things so we can kind of try things out more and not have to commit to it. But even when I saw Parasite here, I wasn't expecting the audience at the Fargo Theater to be a packed audience, and it was.
Awesome.
And again, another great sign of like there are people here who want interesting original content.
I think of all the great foreign films I've seen over the years that people would not watch because they didn't want to read a book, they wanted to see a movie, that now I'm finally like the foreign film section of my DVD collection is finally people are grabbing them and watching them. One of my favorites of all time is a movie called Le Guard de Mon Père. It's a French film that it was pretty much like the Shawshank Redemption of France, where anytime it's on, people stop and will watch it. And it's a beautiful movie and it's a ton of fun and it's hilarious at the same time. And people are finally grabbing it. They're like, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm like, you should have watched this 25 years ago when I told you it was really good.
For so many people, like in landlocked, rural North Dakota, seeing a non-English language film is their first exposure to another culture. Honeyland is set in North Macedonia. And how many, I probably wouldn't even be able to necessarily like put my finger on it on the map. And like Scottie was saying, the universality of the film, the humor, the main character, the main subject, her mother's in her mid 80s and she's at the end of her life. Her health is failing. She's half blind and doesn't even want to eat. And she's like the funniest, sharpest, like just has this great sense of humor on her. And you're like, that's my grandma, when you see that movie.
Do you think that the advent of streaming services is one of the big changes in people watching foreign films? Here's my example. If you grew up in Hillsborough, North Dakota, your one option to rent movies growing up was the gas station, which had the most popular bankable titles because they needed to make their money back off of it. You were not going to see even like Life is Beautiful would be a real risk to put on the shelf there back in the VHS days. But with the advent of streaming, do you think that's introducing these movies to an entirely new group who are in the middle of quote unquote nowhere?
I think it's that, and I think it's social media, because I think people are hearing about things maybe more than they would have, especially if they're from a small rural place where, the news they're hearing, the conversations they're having are so filtered into their own experience. And I think it helps that one of the members of the society owns and manages the Delchar Theater, which is a tiny one-screen theater up kind of on your way to Grand Forks. And his taste in films, based on kind of how he voted for the awards and stuff, is definitely more eclectic than the movies he's able to show at his theater. But that's because he has one screen. He's kind of at the mercy of getting the movies weeks after they've already played at all of the big money-making theaters. So, right now he just finished a run of Knives Out. Well, that's been out for over a month now. And I'm sure he did fine in his little community, but that's not the only kind of movie he's interested in. So he's either having to travel to go see things or see things streaming that he never would have probably gotten to see in his town. And I'm sure he would love to show those things too. But having this place to kind of share these opinions and share that these things are out there, I think definitely helps people with exposure to what it is.
My current obsession right now on Netflix is The Dairy Girls. It's a series about girls living in
Derry.
Yeah,
I haven't had that spelled for me.
Dairy.
Ireland.
Dairy.
Yeah. Not milkmaids.
Living in Northern
Irish
Ireland.
maids.
But there's an episode where their parents go to see The Usual Suspects. It's set in the 90s. And a bomb threat means they have to clear out halfway through, and the rest of the episode is the parents all trying to figure out who Kaiser Soze was and all of their theories.
That's funny.
And because it was the last night it was playing in town, and that was also an era where when a movie left, you might not see it on VHS for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and then even then it's rentable, but it's not purchasable for home libraries for maybe another year after that. And we don't live in that era anymore. Take Parasite, for example. So if you didn't catch Parasite, if you didn't live in a large community where it played, you might not have the opportunity to see it for years until it gets like a cable television run, possibly. But now we live in a great era where the second it's available, I can download it on something and watch it.
It's kind of a catch-22 though, and this is my biggest beef right now with people is that I think because it's so expensive to go to the movies, that's also why streaming has kind of helped with exposure, because people aren't quite willing all the time to spend the amount of money it takes to go to a movie if they're not sure if they're going to like it. It's kind of risky to commit to seeing something original and unique that they're not sure what to expect, as opposed to, even if you didn't like a Marvel movie, you still probably had some entertainment from it, and what you're going in and expecting to get from that. And so it's easier, obviously, if you're one of those families that just goes once a year, you're going to wait and you're going to go to see a Star Wars or a Marvel movie because that you're going to get the bang for your buck there. You're not probably going to venture out and see something even like a Knives Out. I mean, that's kind of an anomaly now that it made over $100 million and it's an original movie because it's risky to spend your money. So you'll wait for it to come to HBO or Netflix or something where you can stream it and not have to kind of commit to sitting in that theater, in case you don't like it. So, and I think that reasons like that or why studios aren't quite as brave to maybe open things wider than they do, because again, it costs them money to do it. It costs the theater money to have those movies fill up screens, and if no one's sitting and seeing it, that's why it surprised me that it didn't surprise me that The Lighthouse opened at the Fargo Theater. That feels like a very Fargo Theater movie. It did surprise me that The Lighthouse opened at Century here in town, because I can't imagine those two audiences being the same.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you right off the bat there, because I think in Fargo, for anyone who's not listening here, the Fargo Theater is our art house, and then we have a corporate chain, Marcus Theaters, that have like the two big cineplexes. And I think sometimes we say, oh, well, you know, we box people, right? And be like, okay, you're someone who goes and sees movies at, you know, Marcus Theaters because you like to wear your pajamas and lay down in the dream loungers and pretend it like it's your living room. Right. And then on the other side, I think there are people who say, well, you know, if you're not going to every movie at the Fargo Theater, you're really not into, you know, film on that side. I worked at the Fargo Theater and I saw this firsthand where there is a view of you think you're better than me. And I think I'm better than you. Between these two cinemas.
I'm meaning more about how much it costs to go see a movie at a Marcus Theater as opposed to how much it costs to go see a movie at a Fargo Theater.
Sure.
And I feel like people
but like Marcus,
would be as
$5
risky.
all Tuesday, all
That's
$5.
a good point. That's true.
And it's packed to the gills during that time.
That's true.
You know, I think to me, going to the movies has become something where what makes me mad about it is I paid the same amount of money as the person who sat in front of me who's checking their phone throughout the entire movie.
Boo.
And, you know, or the person who is clearly sick and came to a movie anyway, so they cough and hack through the whole thing.
Oh, no.
And I love going to movies. In fact, I just found out that I'm being honored by Marcus Theaters as the number one money spender at West Acres. And so,
it's an honor,
Yep.
but it might be
that's
a
like,
dubious honor.
That's like at a casino when the general manager is like, would you like a room and a steak buffet comped?
We're gonna come.
and you know, and my thing was like, you know, I bought out a couple screenings of things at Century. I don't remember going to West Acres that much
I didn't
last
realize
year.
You beat the dentist.
I
You beat
know.
the dentist who rents out the theater all the time.
I know. Isn't that
that's-
amazing?
Is there like a ceremony? Is there like
I get a VIP
tartan?
experience.
Oh.
I don't know what that means, but I'm excited about
I
Wow.
it.
like
Cool.
the ambiguity of
Yeah,
that name.
I can't wait
that
to-
you're going to get a VIP experience,
Right, right.
whatever that might be.
I think the thing that keeps me out of the Cineplex for the most part these days is what I'm getting for what I'm paying for. When I'm paying for a movie ticket, what I feel like I'm paying for is the full experience of going to the movie, not just seeing the movie up on the screen, but everything that goes along with it. And there's so much to that experience in regular movie theaters that I just detest at this point. And clearly they're doing whatever they can to get people like me to keep coming in, right? Because they've got the comfy seats where you can, you know, reserve and you can, you know, buy out screenings and other things they can try to do to get you in the door. But, you know, I'm dropping $14 and then I go in and I'm sitting through 30 minutes of commercials plus another 15 to 20 minutes of trailers. And then the movie happens. And then that's if someone's not talking in front of me or a cell phone isn't going off, or half the time the projection is dim, you know, and you can raise a stink but maybe something happens to it. So I don't get
Or sound bleed is what
Right.
I hear
Oh,
more than
yeah.
anything else is I'm sitting and watching a very tender moment and I'm hearing the sound of lightsabers.
Right. So while I do want to watch a film on like the best screen possible with the best sound system possible, I have a better chance of dialing in that experience at home now than I used to at the movie theater for a variety of reasons. So to me, I would pay an extra $5 on top of the movie ticket that I pay for right now if it meant I showed up to the movie theater and I went and I watched a movie and that's what I saw. Right? There weren't ads, there weren't trailers, there wasn't all that nonsense. There, you know, a bucket of popcorn wasn't like $15. It was just like, yeah, you just have a bucket of popcorn.
And I think that we deserve a theater. There are theaters like that in larger cities. I moved from LA, and the ArcLight there is known for being this, like, it's devoted to the cinema experience.
Right. So if I'm going to pay for an experience, I would like to not be like, it's just like, I guess to me, it feels like if I were to pay for the full version of an app and they still were flooding it with ads after that. That's not how I want to spend my money.
That's where the business side of it all kind of creeps in and kind of ruins the art of it, I feel like. Because like A Hidden Life, the new Terrence Malick movie, it played the Fargo Theater. It was my favorite movie of 2019. There was an article put out of why its release was so limited, and it's because Disney owns 20th Century Fox now, and that's a 20th Century Fox title. Well, Disney's deal with theaters and distribution is basically any Disney movie, a theater has to agree to give it a devoted at least one screen to a movie, so all the show times to that movie. The theaters still have a say in which ones they're going to take or not if they feel like they can afford it. Well, most theaters out there can't afford to put a movie like A Hidden Life and devote an entire screen for an entire day for a full run because they're just not going to fill up the theater like they would a Star Wars movie. Disney wants them to treat it like a Star Wars movie. And so because of that, the only theater, I think in North Dakota, that showed it was the Fargo Theater. It didn't even go to any kind of mainstream movie theater in the state.
I just wonder how the cost benefit analysis for that works out. Like clearly they're going to try to make a decision based off of what gets us the most money. But I wonder if it works out in the wash then after that. If having those restrictions on the viewing from the distributor means almost no viewings in a certain area. I guess I don't know.
Well, and I feel like studios have moved away from their the old trick of, well, you can have this movie, but you also have to show this movie as well. So if
block booking.
Right. But the fact of the matter is that it's so easy to release stuff to streaming services nowadays that they don't need to play that game, because if they've got a movie that they don't think is going to perform as well, rather than adding it to a bill in Congress, they're just going to release it on a streaming service instead, and tell you like, sure, you run this for 2 weeks, and we want 90% of the ticket price and not 70.
One of the pieces of the puzzle that is of concern to the collector, we're all archivists in a certain way, collectors of this content, is when physical media goes away, and presumably you would have to have access to the owner of the content on the respective streaming platforms. That's alarming to me moving forward. If I'm a Coen Brothers completist, I can't get a physical copy of The Ballad of Buster Scruggs right now. And that seems to be the point of the spear, moving forward. I'm hopefully, Disney knows that they can still clean up with ultra high def and Blu-ray releases of Star Wars movies, but what about these smaller titles? I, as an educator, I want to be able to show that work to students, and so I've become something of a content hoarder. I love my physical media.
I also think that we have already seen the backlash of, okay, well, I'm buying stuff that includes a digital copy, because then I'll own it forever and it'll just be out in the cloud. But then Ultraviolet decides to shutter their doors, and they're like, well, some of these titles are now available on this, but since you technically didn't just buy it like this, you got it with another DVD, we don't actually have to give it to you.
And even in the case, like Apple has pulled content that people have paid for. So that's even one step worse of what you're describing.
And also, Apple will not get rid of the copy of Gone Fishin' that I purchased 15 years ago that I no longer want.
I still have that free U2 album that they put in everyone's iTunes accounts.
Just every new phone, you
no
keep
amount
getting
of deleting gets rid of that out of my library.
But digital content, it's like trying to grasp a cloud, right? So you see it there, you can feel it, but you can't hold on to it. And it really, is the thing that frightens me the most. And also, it limits you to the way you can consume it. So I love going to a movie theater because I love a big group experience, but I also love watching stuff on my basement, television on my big screen. But occasionally, all of a sudden, I use a PlayStation 4 to watch most of my stuff, and all of a sudden, they no longer are using the Vudu app, let's say. So I'm like, well, come on, guys, what about all of this? Also, I don't know how this works. Maybe you guys can shed some light on it, but I have purchased DVDs or received them as a gift that include a digital code that's already expired, and I've contacted the seller and said, like, hey, listen, I got this thing that it expired last year. Can I get a new code? And they said no. And so now I'm like, okay, well, I purchased this because it includes this. If I opened it up and it didn't have the DVD, just the Blu-ray, I'd also call you and hope you'd send me the DVD of it. But I wonder how film studios are going to be held accountable for that going forward. And
do the two of you foresee any potential future for film keeping it, like the same thing that happened to the vinyl market, where vinyl seemed to be dead for years because it had been replaced by other technologies, and then not just a nostalgia, but the fact that it could provide a different experience than other pieces of media could have brought it back in a big way. And so now there's sort of a niche market for it. I mean, do you see something like that happening to, film collectors who, like Greg, want to be able to have a physical copy of Blue Velvet and not just, hopefully, the rights to see it, on the drop of a hat on his iPhone?
I think so, because we're kind of right now we're a victim to like the gatekeeping of content. Like it was a huge deal that Friends is no longer on Netflix and it's going to be on another streaming service in a few months. That means you're going to have to sign up for another streaming service if you're a huge Friends fan. So you're just kind of stuck here having to just fork out money all the time to get this content that you want. Whereas you can also just go online and buy the DVDs of Friends and watch them whenever you want and never have to have a subscription. But we have kind of been trained to, we want these things at our fingertips. The digital stuff is easier. There's not as much clutter with like having discs. But then you're also at the mercy of a studio. Like if Netflix decided to pull Ballad of Buster Scruggs for some reason, no one could watch it unless they've been lucky enough to get a screener during award season. And that's basically it. Or for film history, Karina Longworth, who does the You Must Remember This podcast, just did a great series on Song of the South. And she's kind of one of the queens of film history and preservation. And even she basically says at the beginning, like, I'm going to give you as much as I can find. But Disney, because they want to keep their name in the clear, has scrubbed almost anything about this movie. It's impossible basically to find a physical copy of this movie. It hasn't even been screened in probably over 20 years. So people out there who want to see this for the film history aspect of it are basically out of luck. Like none of us will probably ever be able to see this movie ever again.
Yeah, unless you are really entrepreneurial or enterprising. There was a Japanese Laserdisc edition of it. But you need a Laserdisc player, and then the means to acquire one through of a disc of Song of the South through eBay, just to be able to do that.
And so that's why really shitty versions in Georgia, where I'm from, and she talks about it in the podcast. You can find really crappy versions.
Any of us who have been cinephiles and collectors over the years have probably experienced owning bootleg copies of things. There was a cult film called Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, which features a young Diane Lane, a young Laura Dern. It's about a punk rock group in Los Angeles. And I wanted it really badly. And it had never seen any kind of legitimate official release. So the only way to get it was from bootlegs that had been recorded, or copied from theatrical prints. And so I still have my bootleg of it, even though now it's been, treated properly and restored and had an official release.
Scottie, this was well before you moved to Fargo, but there used to be two titans of film preservation who lived in Fargo, Ted Larson and Rusty Castleton. They had one of the country's largest collections.
A massive collection of 16 millimeter materials.
Right. Yeah. So who do either of you just in your own way pursue film preservation restoration? I know that's obviously it's a big budget item. They had to spend a lot of money to accrue these vast collections. Or are you connected to anyone that does that kind of historic film work? And does your society tie into that at all?
I don't actively work in preserving film. I support a couple of different organizations that do, just financially. The upcoming Academy Museum that's supposed to open up this year, and American Film Institute. So that's kind of the way I feel like I do it. I also am such a nomad that I don't even have a vast collection of physical media just because I don't have the space to do it. But that's why I love people like Greg who are equally as passionate about it, but do have the space and the means to do it.
Yeah, I've got closets and closets filled with stuff. I've still got all my laser discs. We were talking with Brent Brandt about that last week, and we still, for whatever reason, have held on to. I've held on to all of mine. I think he's sold some of his because there are collectors who a particular edition might be really special. The Criterion Collection Laserdisc version of Blade Runner was highly sought by collectors because the supplemental features were unique to that edition.
Wasn't it true that also with Star Wars, like the only version you could get, the most recent version you could get that had an original cut, not a special edition cut, would have been on Laserdisc?
No, there was one release just before, during the era of the special editions where the bonus features were basically a rip or a copy from those Laserdiscs.
Okay.
It wasn't even enhanced for 16:9, but it was letterboxed. And those, of course, I bought those too because I just in case, even though the Harmy cut, the despecialized editions are the way to watch Star Wars now, in my opinion.
I think the way the society will support it is through kind of making sure people are aware of classic film screenings happening across the state, because they are on a weekly basis in Bismarck, here in Fargo, and then continuing to even hopefully financially be able to kind of support these screenings on our own across the state. You know, it is a statewide society. We have members across the state. It's not just Fargo, but kind of continuing giving people exposure to these things, and not just through streaming services, but inviting them in to see it, you know, in a movie house like the Fargo Theater, in a place that kind of reminds people what that golden age of going to the movies was like. Even if your golden age was the 80s, there's that excitement about going to the movies as a kid, you know, and kind of remind people about that.
What JJ was saying earlier about seeing a film with an enthusiastic audience is different from going to a multiplex on a Friday night when there are people looking at their cell phones and doing disruptive behavior. But if you're with a group of film lovers that are all into it together, then there's something really special about those screenings. You could have, I just saw on Facebook today, our friend Connor Holt went to a 35 millimeter screening of Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush, and Allison Anders, the film director, introduced the movie. It's like stuff like that is really special, is really cool. And it reminds me of Ted and Rusty and what they did by establishing Silent Movie Night or having the Summer Cinema Series, where you could go and hear a live theatrical pipe organ score with one of these silent films. You know, it wasn't just playing back a track. There's an artist there improvising the sounds that you hear.
And I think we also live in a time too where it's a piece of education and entertainment at the same time, right? You go out and you get to listen to somebody who knows the ins and outs of this movie introduce it, or you get to listen to someone who's playing the Wurlitzer explain, well, you know, these are the themes I'm going for on it, where you're no longer just sitting there and watching a movie. You are experiencing a movie with a crowd. So here's a question. Membership in your society. How do people get to become a member? Because there are probably people who are listening to this thing right now being like, I'm on the website. Tell me what to do.
Yeah, that is a component that we're still kind of figuring out. Right now, it's invite only. Part of that is we want to preserve the integrity of what the mission of the society is. And then it's not just a collection of people who love movies. While we want those people involved, we're kind of figuring out a way to make sure it is kind of open and not that exclusive, but it can be inclusive to the entire kind of film-loving audience. We also don't want to lose sight of what kind of we're setting this thing up for. And again, it's not just to do awards every year. It's to really raise awareness about the different events happening across the state and kind of expose people to where they can take part in it.
So how do your awards voting, how does that system work?
So what we did was we compiled a list of every movie that either had a wide release in North Dakota or was available for streaming in North Dakota, because there are movies out there that didn't get a limited release even here. And we I followed the Academy's list of contenders, but then we also had ones like The Souvenir, which was on both of our kind of list of best movies of the year, that didn't make the cut for the Oscars, but we still felt like it should be eligible. And so everyone in the society, they picked their top 5 for every single category, and it was a kind of a ranked scoring system. So your top choice got 5 points, your 5th choice got 1 point, and that kind of gave us this consensus of who our nominees were. And the second round, it was just by the popular vote for each category. And we did throw a special achievement award that everyone voted on to give to 1917, because that was a film that didn't get a release here in time. We knew we wanted to make sure that the cutoff of the nomination and the awards period was still within the kind of award season conversation. Again, mostly just to get the press and the momentum from that. So we couldn't really wait too long to...
If you wait till after the Oscars, then you're not going to have any kind of excitement around the sharing of this opinion. Really, that's what these are.
Exactly.
And it's fun, I think, for film societies, critics associations, nationwide, regionally, et cetera, to be able to have something that differs from the overarching kind of dominating 800-pound gorilla of the Oscars. You know, I was posting after our final tallies came out, I said not all of my favorites won. I mean, obviously that's going to be true for everybody. Your vote may not be the one that gets the award when it's a group of voters, but I was really happy that Florence Pugh, I know you hate Midsummer, JJ, but
I really did.
Florence Pugh was the recipient of our Best Actress award. And while there are many great performances that would fit in that category, I was like, this is awesome. I wanted to trumpet that because she did not receive even an Oscar nomination. Her nomination was in the supporting category.
And the website Next Best Picture just posted an article about our awards, and they have this really cool ranking on the side of their site that shows every winner from every regional society and industry guild, like the Producers Guild,
Yep.
things like that. So you can see how each winner is ranking throughout the season, and so it's neat to see ours show up on there and see where our tastes were similar to kind of the greater conversation and where we were different, which is also exciting. And I don't think that we were different because we wanted to be different. It just showcases that people have different tastes. And
yeah, I mean, everybody was voting their opinion, right?
Yeah.
And so members of the society that I know, we had spirited conversations, arguing back and forth about, how you love this and I don't. And that's something that's fun about film, even though across the board, it seems like, and I don't expect it to win Best Picture, even though maybe it should, Parasite was just walking away with award after award after award. And it's just such a, I think it's just a phenomenal film. And I'm, happy to see what did win, what won Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, won ours, right? So that was my example, was that I would not, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, fine, it's part of the conversation, wasn't even in my personal nominees of the 5 Best Pictures.
I always find it, it's great because, you're getting validation from the fact that, like, yep, we said these things, and then the people that the world looks to also said them. But at the same time, like, yeah, and we also said this.
Yeah.
We also said this.
Yeah.
So
That's exactly
if you
right.
think it's a good thing that we fell in line with this, maybe there's merit to what we're saying on the other side too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's the year Fargo came out. Fargo, North Dakota did not care for that movie. We thought that it was making fun of us, and I think the general consensus was I went and saw it instead of like, I saw it.
There were some people, I'll say though, like Margie Bailey knew what time it was.
Oh yeah,
right?
without a doubt.
She realized, I think, before anybody else did, that this was going to offer our community so much mileage. The film's not even set in Fargo. Mm-hmm. Not a scene was shot in Fargo. I mean, and yet it's been like bread and butter for the film festival and for the community.
I'll give credit to Rick Stern too, because do you remember when it came on to VHS, he flipped a car in the parking lot and made it look like there's a blood trail from it.
So many good
Great marketing
stunts like that over the years. There should be a website that collects all of those, because from the wood chipper at the Convention and Visitors Bureau to Markie's idea to show it drive-in style on the side of the Radisson for the one of the anniversary screenings, and of course our friend Kristen Rudrud, who is a Fargoan, who plays the abducted wife of Bill Macy's character. She is truly a connection to that movie.
I would take my friends on a Ferris Bueller tour of Chicago, so there should be a Fargo tour of Fargo. Like that makes total sense.
We need to get Noah Hawley on board somehow. I don't even, beyond that the first season, I haven't kept up with. I just don't have time to watch episodic. I'd love to, but it would be great to feed into any subsequent series of Fargo to like get some authentic Fargo related things possibly into the show. Where's the show set? Where is
it's all over the place.
All over regionally.
Sometimes it's in a Minnesota town.
Okay.
It's at South Dakota. I think this next one is Kansas City.
Isn't it like in the past too, or something?
Something.
What's funny is a variation of where the time period.
They jump all over the place, and it's not the same character. There's one character who follows it from he's old in season 1, and then you see him as a young man in season 2. I think that Fargo is one of the best things I've watched on television, and Greg, as somebody who's a Joel and Ethan Coen fanatic, the soundtrack that they build for these it is just genius. In season 3, they use different covers of famous tunes that they have used throughout their cinematic career. I mean, they do a wonderful job. But a Fargo tour of Fargo hosted by Kristen Rudrud. I'd get on that bus. And Matt Bus, they got nothing going on right now. They could really probably make that happen. So what's the idea with the showing films, right? And so using that educational component to it. So are we talking about Matt O'Lean did that series like at the Fargo Library.
Ongoing, yeah.
Right.
He's still doing the ongoing series.
And so, is it an idea of like getting some people together with a giant calendar for the entire year and saying like, okay, what are you doing so I don't step on this? I've noticed that there are times where like the Fargo Theater's film classics, they'll show the exact same thing like on a Marcus screen. Because they just, they both want to get that Gremlins dollar when it comes to the holiday season. Is there an idea of like working with other people who are in this industry doing the same thing? Or, were you approaching people like Matt O'Lean right at the beginning?
Yeah, he was one of the first ones that we kind of included. He's part of the founding kind of members. But I have a kind of an ongoing editorial calendar is what I'm calling it. It's just a Google Doc that's kind of a living Google Doc that I'm kind of plugging in things as I find them. And then I'm constantly sending out emails to the society too of, hey, if you hear something, let me know. And people have started being more proactive with letting me know things that they know that are coming up that maybe aren't out there online yet. And then that's part of kind of the battle right now is there's some interesting libraries across the state that host classic movie nights in the library, but it's so hidden on their kind of events calendar because for them it's just a thing that it'd be great to almost surprise them with this influx of people who didn't even know it was happening because there's no promotion around it. And now suddenly in Jamestown, there's this cool event that people there want to go to. And then working, hopefully it'd be amazing to work with the Fargo Theater. And if they're showing an Alfred Hitchcock movie, let's kind of elevate that and go even more and let the society help create this like Hitchcock night or something that's beyond just we're showing this classic movie. Let's, kind of do something more.
Is the idea that you've got membership, but then you also have people who follow the Film Society so that they get that information? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So I think the idea of the society is to help with this promotion, which feeds into that kind of preservation and holding, kind of the keys to this, golden thing that we don't want to let go. And so the people who follow on social media, their role there is to find exposure to events happening and things that are happening and be part of the conversation on that side. Right now, the society members are the ones helping to feed that information, whether that's writing reviews, whether that's an article where they've interviewed some filmmakers from North Dakota, whether that's sharing the unique things that we have some filmmakers on the society, what they're doing and showcase, like people are doing this here. You don't have to just be a consumer of kind of the mass versions of it. People in our society are every day in production on stuff.
What about those individuals who just want to know more about film itself? Like I think of the people who are, the random kid who shows up to MCAT or MCAM now and wants to make a movie and things like that. Like, do you hope to kind of be a resource for them too, so that if they have a dream and a drive, they've got a place rather than having to go and figure out, get 5 people to tell them Greg Carlson before they find out that he's not showing up for the summer in his office?
Yeah, I think that would be great. We have a few educators on there, so it'd be neat to connect people with people like that or the filmmakers who are part of the society. They would be obviously a great resource to share that knowledge. And I know that they obviously, especially if they're working here, they're so hungry for the attention and not in a they're still humble about it, but they're hungry for that notoriety. And again, we have these amazing artists here. Let's give them the attention. Let's showcase that we have people here with a voice. And I know that they would love to work with other people to help them kind of elevate that too.
I think what's hard is in North Dakota, because film production is on such a small scale, because in my opinion, our state has not done a super great job in figuring out tax incentives or anything to really get, major film production or television production to come here. But it's kind of seen as like, oh yeah, they're making that cute little movie. That little, they shut down the farmer's market for an hour so they can make that cute little movie that, we'll see. Or, oh, this is my copy of Smoke Signals that I got from, my uncle for Christmas. And I think that is one of the difficult things, is to get the citizens of North Dakota to see that, like, nope, your state can have this industry too. This doesn't have to be something that is relegated to other places. This doesn't have to be just Minneapolis. This could be Valley City too.
I think it helps that we are in such a season of growth, especially here in Fargo, that I think people are realizing there's opportunity here that they probably never would have considered. I mean, there are people, I'm not from here. I don't know anyone from here before I moved. So my family and friends from the other places, they still get confused on where Fargo's even at. They forget that there's 2 Dakotas. Like, it's so off the map for a lot of people. I could imagine the people in the industry, it would be off the map for them too. Maybe they know someone from here, or they know connections like, Jeff Bridges has a connection, like those kinds of things. But or they come through at the Fargo Jet Center for a layover real quick before they head off somewhere else. And that's their connection. But with the airport had its like second busiest year ever, things like that. People are, kind of starting to make Fargo more of a place and a destination. So I feel like the more notoriety we can give and show that there are these people here and this talent is here, kind of jumping on the bandwagon of the growth, I can't imagine it going anywhere but up.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly, and and it's about time too. That's what I think is we're still 30 years behind other states who have figured out. You take like Georgia. Way to go, Georgia! Yeah. You really figured that one out, and now look at you. I mean, look at the billions of dollars that are being brought in every
Which the taxes
year.
helped, the airport helps, and it's those little like infrastructure things. That you can have all the talent
Tyler
you want.
Perry helps too.
That is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure. No joke. No joke.
I don't want to talk about Tyler.
No. I don't think it's bad. I think it's good.
No,
I think it's good.
Yeah.
Right. I think of what the heck is it? I can't think. He came to the Fargo Film Festival the year that you were the main projectionist there, and we hired Phil Lund to drive him around all day.
From Sopranos season 2. Who is married to Janice, and then she kills him in the kitchen. What's that actor's name?
Oh my gosh!
Been in a million things.
It's a million years ago for me.
David.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about because he was in a film that played in the festival, and so I'd completely forgotten that actor came.
And
blanking on his name.
And his girlfriend was
her family lived in Detroit Lakes or something, so he wanted to visit DL. Get someone to kind of chauffeur them out there so they could meet relatives and
we
stuff
got
like
Phil
that.
Lund of all people to drive them around, and he drove them around all day long. Anyway,
Well, that's got to be a good memory for Phil.
It's a great one.
I'm sure he's got good stories.
Yeah, like at one point, the guy had asked for some Italian food, and Phil goes, "I hate to break it to you, but your choices are the Olive Garden."
Unless you go to the spaghetti feed, the St. Elizabeth Church spaghetti feed in Dilworth, because they have a Little Italy.
Yeah, and Phil had mentioned that, and they called that church that it's at, and they said, nope, not till Sunday, and it was like a Thursday.
Yeah, you'd have to get like a local grandmother to whip something up for it to have the real what he's probably looking for some gravy, right?
Yeah,
he wants to get the right gravy.
Well, I remember there's a moment where I was riding in the front seat listening to her talking. He goes, "You could shoot any movie here." He goes, "Look at this." And we were driving down Roberts Alley. He goes,
David Proval.
There you go. Thank you.
Richie Aprile, who he played in Sopranos.
He talked about, he goes, "This looks just like in New York." He goes, "This could be New York in a heartbeat." He goes, "You put someone over there yelling about crack, and you put someone over here with a map in their hand. They're the tourist." He goes, "It's New York City." And it really got me to think, like, why aren't we shooting more stuff like that?
It's also so untapped that it can double as something, but it also will be a different version of that look. It's not the same alleyway in this TV show and that movie. That's how I feel like kind of Atlanta's problem right now is they have so much happening that you end up, like, when I watch it, maybe because I'm from there, it's easier for me to spot too, but I have started noticing, the same swimming pool is in things, the same, like in The Walking Dead, at the gravel pit place, that's been in so many things now, because they're just kind of running out. They're almost overwhelmed with productions, which is a great problem to have, but we haven't even been tapped.
That just happened to me last weekend. I'm a big Downton Abbey fan, and so of course you can't get past that establishing shot of the beautiful manor in Downton Abbey. I'm watching King Ralph with John Goodman.
Oh, yeah.
John Hurt is the villain in it, and his house is Downton Abbey.
Is Downton Abbey.
And I swear to God, it's the same exact establishing shot,
nice.
like to a T. And he's in the reading room or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, where's Lord Grantham? He's going to pop in any minute and tell you can't do that to the king. It's one of my favorite things when I spot something that gets reused. And if you watch old television that was like filmed on the Warner backlot, every single block is the same. It's like that was an episode of Dennis the Menace. It was also an episode of Gunsmoke. It was The Music Man. We saw this, a million times.
I could have swore I just read that the new Batman is filming in like Ireland or something, or like a non-US city is standing in for Gotham. It might have been Toronto in Canada, but I could have swore it was something like, whoa, that's a weird choice. I think somewhere in Europe somewhere. I'll have to double check that.
One of my favorite stories from I'll Give You Money If You Film It Here is when SCTV started. And they're like, well, we'll film this in Toronto, right? And the guy who was putting up the money was like, no, I actually have a studio, and it was like in Edmonton. And so they were like, but there's nothing in Edmonton. And he's like, but you guys would be. And so they went out and they filmed it there. And they said it was great because we got the run of the town. They're like, if we need a street closed down, no problem. We called the chief of police that day and asked him to like shut this down. Because when we needed a makeup person, they like brought in this woman who had done like Live at 5 makeup for years. And she had a dream of doing theatrical makeup, and just everything fell into place for SCTV because they were in this little tiny spot that they hadn't done stuff before. And I feel like Fargo could be that for people.
Yeah.
Like you need like a mountain of snow, no problem. We'll get 3 tractors in here this afternoon and we'll put it together for you.
How much do you think of that was the impetus for how they produced Schitt's Creek?
Oh, so much. I think so much. And in fact, when I went and saw the Schitt's Creek live panel, and they were talking about how Eugene Levy talked about how like the first season that they were in this little town filming, nobody came up and talked to them. Like they'd be mowing their lawn, and not want to come over and see what's going on. Season 2, they started kind of like looking over, and they would stop mowing the lawn because they'd understand like, nope, you need the sound to be right. And he goes, and on the third one, they were coming over and they were watching dailies and saying, you should do another take of that one. And he goes, it's amazing because that whole town now thinks that they are the producer of this television program. And I'm sure that there's lots of great people in Fargo who'd be like, she's supposed to be knitting in this scene, and she's really not knitting right now. It's like the one thing, if I could be in Hollywood, I would like to be a video game consultant, because nobody plays video games right when they're being filmed. They're all like, mashing buttons and click, 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 click all over the place. I think that's not how you play a video game.
It's like people who are driving on camera, the cars attack, and
they're moving their hands left, right, left, right.
I recently just rewatched Airplane, and that scene where Robert Stack has been picked up from his home, and now he's driving the guy who came to pick him up, and they're embracing the fact that it's clearly a blue screen because they're getting chased after by men on horseback at one point. I think they're like in an Indy race or something, and where his arm movements are clearly not even matching up to the car that's careening out of control behind them.
Why haven't we seen a Zucker Brothers film in a while?
We need one. Are they
because they're 150 years old? Maybe.
Probably.
I don't know. I mean,
but Mel Brooks. Mel Gibson. He's on the same token.
Yeah, we need a new Mel Gibson movie pretty soon.
I feel like comedians who had a huge following in yesteryear are having like a real resurgence right now. I just read that like Carol Burnett is shopping something around that people are saying could be the best movie of the year it comes out. And
if you want to have a good JJ Meets World conversation about ZAZ, invite Ben Hansen on, because that the Zookers are that's his like pinnacle, his Mount Everest, his favorite like all time. He's like very steeped in their world and Airplane and all that stuff. You can hold forth at length on it.
Somebody just told me that their favorite movie was the Three Stooges movie that came out a couple years ago.
Oh wow, that's someone's favorite movie.
And I said, other than like the original Three Stooges, and he goes, I've never seen any of the original Three Stooges.
So
this person is worth an interview.
Yeah. Right. This person sounds an invite into the society, obviously, right?
That's the taste we're looking for.
I do remember I think the 1 or 2 times I ever served on a jury for the Fargo Film Festival. I was at Greg's house. Must have been an animation jury or something. And we all went around first and said, like,
Okay.
my name is X and here is my favorite movie of all time. And we were getting a bunch of like Reservoir Dogs, Citizen Kane, a lot of these marquee movies. So I had to pick something that wasn't that, thinking it would get a big laugh from the group.
Oh, okay.
And I picked Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Right.
And just dead.
It just went over
Nothing. It was almost like they were like, yeah, that would be your favorite. Yeah.
Right.
That
It
wasn't
went
the last
over
time you
just
were
like a
invited?
Paul Blart movie.
Yes, it did.
Among film critics.
Yeah.
Clearly. Huh. I don't recall. I don't remember that, but it's
a real Cat and Ron moment
You
for me.
saying that, yeah. JJ, Scottie, if you don't know, JJ champions Captain Ron as a favorite. I love. There's so much heart in discussing bad movies we love.
Yeah.
I think that's so. This Three Stooges person. Wouldn't you think that they would be, if that was their favorite movie, that they would want to seek out and go look at the original article? Because there's so many fantastic Three Stooges shorts. They're so brilliant. Or maybe he would be like, nah, this isn't what I saw.
Right. My worry is that he'd be like, the animated Three Stooges series. Okay. I think that like a bad movie that you love usually has nostalgia, like
Totally,
kind of stamped
Right,
on it a little
right.
bit. But this gentleman I'm talking about is in his early 40s. So, and I was like, were you getting a divorce at the time? What was happening in your life when this movie came out?
Who played the Stooges in that? Will Sasso is Curly, right?
Yep. And then Sean Hayes was
Larry's right,
Larry.
yeah.
And then the guy who plays Russ Hanneman in Silicon Valley played Mo. But then Larry David is in it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge cast of other people.
I watched it. I just don't. It just does not stick with me.
Yeah.
I would have to go back and look at it again. I remember thinking that some of the spirit, was there, but it, of course, you can't recreate the personality of these iconic people. You all know this. I am anti-biopic, right? I don't want to see, I love Joaquin Phoenix. I don't want to see him imitate Johnny Cash because Johnny Cash is Johnny Cash. That's my, so biopics are always bottom of the barrel for me.
What if they take a different tack, like that Bob Dylan one,
Yeah.
where they had like 5 different actors play Dylan in the
Is
same
that called
movie?
I'm Not There?
I'm
Is
Not
that the
There.
name of that one?
I think that's the name of it.
There are some that do that. There was a film that used, it was a biopic of Serge Gainsbourg, that used puppetry, and it had this like really interesting, they had built a special puppet to represent him. And so in a lot of the sequences where there's reminiscing or flashbacks, he's portrayed by this puppet. Things like that I'm more inclined to be interested in.
Is it merely
looking at.
because it's the biggest irritation is that you're seeing an actor portraying a real person, or is it, I know the arc of this person's life, therefore I know where the story's going?
It's got to be a little bit of both, because there's most biopics conform to that greatest hits kind of thing. Like
Right.
they're very, they tend to be very chronological. This happened, this important thing happened, then this important thing happened, and so I'm always hard pressed. I was having an argument with someone earlier this weekend about the 2 popes, because I was just like, no thanks. I mean, performance is fine, but this story was so far-fetched, so off the mark. I read this because after I saw it, I was like, did that happen? Did any of that happen? So I investigated and read a great essay by a Catholic scholar who's like, no, none of that happened. And it completely ignores like all of X, Y, and Z, which it pretty much does. And so I was like, yeah, that's kind of how I felt, that you're watching these 2 great actors, do good work, but I never want to see that movie or think about that movie again.
Do you ever hear the story about The Day After Tomorrow and how Trey Stone and Matt Parker got an early cut of that like screenplay, and they had a production deal at Paramount, and they were allowed to do whatever they want. Like the South Park movie had been so huge for them that they were allowed to do whatever they want. And so they were on this kick of doing a puppet movie. And so they were going to take this script and shoot it word for word, scene for scene, and release it on the exact same day, only have puppets instead of human beings in it. I wish they would have done that. I would have loved to have seen stuff like that. I love little things where where someone takes an idea and they flip it. You talk about biopics. One of my favorite true stories told with a little wink is Bernie, the Jack Black movie.
Yeah, that's great.
Where everybody in it is real except for the three main principals.
Yeah.
And they're the only ones who are portraying somebody else. I thought that was an incredibly
that
creative
stuff's
choice.
good. Creative nonfiction. That's I would say different thing than a biopic. And I agree. Yeah. True, quote unquote, true stories that have something, that, like you said, is altered.
It's more focused on the event that happened in that person's life versus the life of that person.
And that's where it gets hard to, as an audience member, separate the gimmick from the art of it. And that's why I think Renee Zellweger's performance as Judy was great. She's the front runner right now to win the Oscar. But when I was watching that movie, which I really enjoyed, I also found myself not really caring about the story as much as really watching her intricacies and seeing, like, when can I tell it's her and when do I think it's Judy? So my entire experience is built around trying to see, can they convince me that this is Judy Garland and not Renee Zellweger? And that's how I felt about Joaquin's performance as Johnny Cash. I feel like the whole time you're waiting to see, can he do it? Can he pull off being Johnny Cash? And you kind of forget what you're there to see and watch.
That so interesting enough, that happened to me in 1917.
Yeah.
I hadn't read anything about it. I wanted to go into that movie as clean as possible because I'd already seen the trailer for 6 months straight. So, I already was deep into this. I knew Colin Firth's whole speech by the time the movie opened. Yes. But I found myself not being able to focus on what's going on story-wise because I'm like, how the hell did they have a 22-minute long shot with no interruption? How are they lighting this thing? I found myself thinking how did they create what I'm watching here versus an elderly couple to my right, they were just mesmerized the whole time. And I think because you didn't have those edit, you kind of get, it's almost like they put you into a trance.
I found myself doing the same thing. I think maybe that's my filmmaking brain coming into play of trying to figure out, okay, obviously this is not one single shot. There are cuts, there are edits here. So what are the tricks that they took? Was it when the camera moved behind that tree that made it easy for them to seam that together? And so I feel like I'd lost some of the impact because I couldn't get that filter out of the way. I was still mesmerized by it, and some of the behind the scenes footage, especially when he's running through that field, is just remarkable how they pulled it off. But the gimmick almost kind of distracted me from it.
The moment that I thought, okay, so they're obviously working with something that I am totally unable to see is the movie opens with this super long shot of them going through the trenches, and then they go through no man's land, and at one point they kind of go into this crater that's filled with water, and there's a crow on a corpse. And I'm like, there is no way this crow has been sitting there for 22 minutes unless they've tied his little feet.
Maybe it's trained. Crows are really smart. Who knows?
Are they? Are crows smart?
Yeah, crows are super smart.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't like that.
There's tons of video of them basically creating tools where they can show how crows will see a plastic bottle with a nut on the inside at the bottom that their beak can't reach, and there's video of them finding a piece of wire and using it to basically make a hook to get the nut out. There are even examples of as a cleanup, park cleanup, they'll train crows to pick up garbage, because when they put the garbage in this receptacle, this little piece of corn comes out and they'll eat the corn. And so there are places where they've trained crows to basically clean up.
This is going to fuel JJ's nightmares now, because he's going to be thinking, okay, wait, I didn't realize crows were on top of things.
I walked out to go to work one day this fall, and it's 4:30 in the morning, and there's a crow perched on top of a tree in my front yard, and it looks down at me and and I'm like, well, today's going to be a bad day.
Quite an omen.
Was that the day you went and saw Cats?
I wish it was. So I had to see that movie twice.
Oh.
Because I went the first weekend, and then I had to see, okay, let's see if I can spot all the stuff they fixed.
Did it fix the movie? Was the movie suddenly good when they put CG hands on Judi Dench?
No, but a fight broke out in my theater the second time I went to it.
What?
And I asked the manager, and I said, is this comedy? He goes, yeah, we've had quite a few where people go to see it as a laugh riot and be it's so ridiculous. Yeah. And there are people who are taking it very seriously. And so in the theater I was in, a guy turned around and started yelling, shut the F up, shut the F up. And it made these kids laugh even harder.
Oh boy.
And so, which happened to me only once in my history of going to the cinema, which is when I went to go see the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. And I was laughing and dying. And there was a dad there who took his kids to it who was not having it.
He thought you guys were being ironic, right?
I think he thought we were high as kites is what he thought. If I'm gonna throw something out there.
At that point, the most you were on was some Boone's Farm, maybe.
Not even. It was 3 adult men who were like, let's go see this movie. And truth be told, I still watch that movie and think it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Isn't Katie a SpongeBob fan?
Yeah, Katie's a big SpongeBob fan from the original series stuff, especially. I know we haven't kept up. Now there's another kind of a fresh generation of all the SpongeBob memes that have become so commonplace that I feel like there's a younger slice of fandom. And then there's another. What number movie is the next SpongeBob
This
movie?
will be the 4th?
I think that's what Forrest thought, was that it was going to be the 4th theatrical SpongeBob movie already.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing.
Wow.
In fact, it absolutely is, because it's SpongeBob and the Sponge Out of Water, and then whatever the last one was. Now this one.
Okay.
We're also getting a Rugrats movie this year.
I know,
so
which I'm
that'll
very
be-
excited about.
Yeah.
Do you ever see when they dress the adult cast up as their characters and they looked shockingly similar?
Oh, I would love to see
Yeah,
that.
it's an old Nickelodeon Kids Choice Award.
I
interesting.
always think about the scene when Stewie Pickles' dad is making pudding at 2 a.m, and his mom comes out of the kitchen and goes, "Why are you making pudding at 2 a.m?" And he says, "Because my life is falling apart." And that's all. That's it.
perfect.
That's the whole scene. They just move on after that.
That's good writing.
Yeah.
That's excellent writing.
If you want to read an
For real.
excellent book about what is considered the golden age of Nickelodeon, there's a book called Slimed that is an oral history put together
Interesting.
by this individual who said, okay, so tell me what it was like to be on. You can't do that on television and be one of the biggest stars in the world and find out that your paycheck is $25.
Oh, yeah.
And how the Slime was copyrighted by some dude, and Nickelodeon is still in litigation with him.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a great book. You should check it out. But that's a discussion for another time. We're wrapping up our North Dakota Film Society discussion here. Scottie, Greg, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it. If people want to find information about what you guys are doing with the society, what's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, our website, NorthDakotaFilmSociety.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I think on Twitter, we're ND Film Society, and the other two, North Dakota Film Society. So follow us there. That's where we'll share most of the information. We actually have our first official real life society meeting tomorrow. And so that's where we'll kind of start having discussions on what 2020 looks like for the society, what membership can look like. We'd love to obviously have.
It's like the
What are
Shriners,
your-
right? You have to either save the life of a member of the North Dakota Film Society,
Exactly.
or be the offspring of a member of the.
Yeah.
Okay.
House of Lords.
So you push Greg into traffic, and I'll pull him out.
I
And
was
then a
gonna
week
say,
later, we'll just do a reverse.
What kind of hooded cloaks have you chosen for the society? That'll be the real question there.
If you get your invite, you'll find out.
I'll bring the candles. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing you at the movie theater.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews, and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com and you can find direct contact info for JJ. If we could clone a person, it should probably be Kurt Russell.